المصطفى رسول إمام بنور الصفا.
Welcome back to Urban Women. It is already 22 minutes past the hour of 11 and we're talking about something very interesting. Now, on Mondays, well, before I continue, do join us live. We are live on Facebook and YouTube right now. So we're talking about beauty, right? On Mondays, this is what we do. But today's topic is very interesting and I think you really want to turn up the volume here. For many people, the journey to losing weight, it can feel like an endless cycle of diets, exercise plans, and also frustration. Now, we're often told that weight loss is simply about eating less and moving more, but medical experts say the reality is actually far more complex. At the same time, social media has fueled a surge in interest around weight loss injections and peptides, with many individuals turning to unregulated online sources and self-administering products without medical supervision, raising serious concerns about safety and also long-term health consequences. Now, to help us understand this topic, and we're going to be chatting about weight gain, insulin resistance, and peptides, what you need to know before starting a weight loss journey. We're joined now in our studio by Fatima Zahra Mohammed, who's a medical doctor from Pietermaritzburg, my hometown, currently working in medical weight loss, hormonal health, peptide therapy for Dr. Mathan Associates. Welcome, Dr. Fatima. It's such a pleasure to have you on Urban Woman this morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, Dr. Fatima, many people still believe that weight loss is actually still a matter of eating less and moving more. Is obesity really that straightforward, or is there more that is actually happening beneath the surface?
Okay, so that is a very frustrating common misunderstanding when it comes to obesity. So, yes, diet and lifestyle is extremely important and nobody is denying that. But with a normal person who has a couple of kilos to shred and who isn't struggling with obesity itself, it could be more relevant. But when it comes to obesity, it's actually defined as a complex, chronic metabolic disease, right, where other factors such as hormones, stress, the environment we live in, satiation, as well as your hunger, all affect the way your body holds onto that fat. So obesity is far more complex than just simply eat less, move more. Yeah. And it's actually a disease that needs to be managed, and we need to look at all other aspects that contribute towards it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, the human being is not just made up of one aspect. So to just, put it on so simply, it really doesn't make sense. That's why you'll hear some people are doing certain things. It may work for them, others it isn't working for them. So it's important to understand your body per se and what's going on. Share with us, Doc, how do hormones actually influence appetite, cravings, metabolism, and also fat storage?
So hormones are chemical messengers, and they let the brain know whether we are full, they let the brain know whether we are hungry. So we have multiple hormones that take place, that play these parts in our body. So we have adrenaline, the hunger hormone, which basically lets our body know how hungry we are. Right. So usually when we diet for prolonged periods of time, that hormone increases in the body.
How can
and that
we
is
stop
why.
that?
So that's the thing. So usually when we have that hormone, that is why when you diet for prolonged periods of time, you actually feel very hungry, and it's very difficult to stay on that diet and be sustainable on it. Yeah. And then we have leptin, the satiation hormone, that makes you feel more full. And then in females, we have the estrogen. So estrogen actually helps with the distribution of fat in the body. So as women age and we reach perimenopause and menopause, they'll notice that despite their lifestyle being the exact same, they are suddenly holding on to fat a lot more. And progesterone, which comes in through the second cycle, second part of the menstrual cycle, actually increases our appetite. So women tend to eat more and the bodies tend to look a bit more different, and it's difficult to hold on to calories to have calorie restriction during that time. Testosterone, which is also available in men and hormone, if it's decreased, they're unable to have a good muscle mass. So all of these hormones really contribute towards how we hold on to fat, how we build muscle when we exercise, how we actually digest food as well. Insulin is also a hormone that plays a role in fat storage, fat distribution, energy levels as well. So all of these are hormones that are in the body, and in obesity, these hormones can be, completely abnormal, and we try to regulate that as much as possible. So
you spoke about insulin, that's also hormone, right?
Yes.
And we hear insulin resistance. It's a term that we are hearing very often. Explain to us, what exactly is that?
So insulin resistance is quite common, Let's give it sort of an example. So you can think of insulin as a key. So it's a key to the cell, and it helps push glucose into the cell or sugar into the cell that we can use as energy. But in insulin resistance, that key and lock system kind of becomes a bit rusty.
Right.
And the insulin doesn't exactly work on the cells to allow glucose in. So the body gives feedback and tries to produce more insulin. The body also tries to release, and then you have more glucose that's circulating freely because it's unable to go into the blood. And that is how we actually get type 2 diabetes develop over a long-term thing. And in females, insulin resistance comes up a lot because it's very common in polycystic ovarian syndrome. And the high amounts of insulin can actually cause the ovaries to produce more of the male hormones, the androgenic hormones, which gives a lot of the weight gain, the acne, the hirsutism, and all of the side effects that come with polycystic ovarian syndrome can be triggered by insulin resistance, which is why we hear about it a lot when it comes to female health as well. The good thing to know is that with medication and with good lifestyle changes, good sleep, good stress management, insulin resistance can actually be put under control. So that's the good thing about insulin resistance.
Wow. Now I know when people say I have PCOS because I do cupping therapy, and a lot of women are suffering with this. Now I actually understand what's actually going on in their bodies. You know, there's a lot of discussion now. We're going to get to the meat of it, and I think this is kind of trending at the moment around the GLP-1 medications such as Ozempic and so many others. So what exactly would you say are these medications and how do they work?
So GLP-1s, which are our Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, these are medications that actually mimic a normal hormone that's found in our body after we eat, which is why they're interesting. And they're also regarded as peptides. But these are approved research peptides with lots of human data behind them. So these help mimic a hormone that's already present in our body after we eat, and so they keep us feeling fuller for longer. They actually work in the brain as well to decrease the pleasure pathways, so the amount of food noise sort of decreases. So people who usually start it, they say they don't feel like they're craving for food that much. So it really also slows down the digestion of food, so it keeps you feeling fuller for longer.
I've heard
so
that,
so it keeps that satiation signals quite high. So that's how we've been using it for with our obesity management. But beyond that, it works metabolically in many different ways. So that's what makes it so interesting for us, and it's such a breakthrough drug. But there's a lot of side effects. It's not a miracle drug.
Oh boy.
It's best to
I assumed it was. The results that I'm seeing, and you know, when you go and you see Hollywood and there's the so-called Ozempic face though. But anyway, I'm sure you're coming to that. But yeah, go ahead and do tell us about it.
So the good thing about it is that, you know, like you said, it does have phenomenal changes with inflammation. It's really good in some our type 2 diabetic patients who are extremely overweight and struggling to lose that weight. It has phenomenal effects. However, you know, people who are taking it that don't really need it, it can have very severe side effects. So it's best to be done when it's regulated. It's best to it's not a miracle drug. It needs to be supported with diet and lifestyle and nutrition, and you also need to look at the biology behind everything before you start a drug like that. And that's what our concern is as doctors. We want to make sure that patients who are taking it the right way. They're not just dosing it themselves. They're not increasing the dose, dealing with severe side effects from it. They're not just taking it because they simply want to, you know, look a certain way, but because they really, really need it. You know, that's what we're trying to really make sure that patients are getting the best benefit when it comes to these
I think it's so important that you do understand that you do have a valid reason. Like
For
I have a
taking it.
client who's got PCOS and it's really helping her. She's on these, and of course under the guidance of a medical doctor. So we're seeing a growing trend of people purchasing peptides and weight loss injections online without the medical supervision. So what are these so-called grey market peptides?
So there's two kind of grey market peptides we're talking about here. There's the grey market peptides that we're talking about, the peptides like the GLP-1s and stuff that are being advertised on social media, being sold by influencers, and where patients are sort of self-administering these drugs. And that is what our concern is. You know, it's really frustrating for healthcare professionals to actually witness that happening, because we actually have to deal with the backlash of when the patients come in with the side effects or the adverse effects of it. So these are drugs that are actually not approved. They may not have undergone proper safety testing. We don't know about the contents that are actually being sold in this, which labs they're being produced in. No. Is it actually incorrectly dosed, contain impurities? We don't even know the packaging or the labeling sometimes. So we also need to have a guarantee on sterility, quality control, the manufacturing standards, all of these things, and the storage conditions of these drugs. So all of these need to be taken into account before you purchase any of these drugs. And then there's the peptides that are currently being marketed on social media and trending on social media that have no long-term data on them. Okay. So we have the GLP-1s and stuff that have data on them, and clinical research has been done on them, and they're approved drugs. And then the grey market ones is where they're just being sold on the side by unauthorized providers. So that's the grey market GLP-1s. And then we get the current peptide market where people are using these other peptides like the copper peptide for skin and all of these other peptides.
Yes, I heard about that too.
But these peptides are, the research that was done on them was actually predominantly done on animals. Okay. Not a lot of it was actually done on humans. So they're more experimental, And as we discussed, peptides are also sort of a chain of amino acids that also send signals to the cells to produce something. And some of them have, on the cells, they have signals, but some of them don't actually work. So while some patients may see benefits from it, others don't. But those peptides at the moment are very experimental, and social media is marketing them as, great and wonderful. And we're not saying they are. We're just, as healthcare professionals, we're just saying that there is not enough data on them. Everything we have is anecdotal. Anything we have wasn't tested on human beings. So we don't have enough safety information on it. So while there may be uses to it, there is no long-term data on it. And if you are going to be taking any of those peptides or buying them, you'd rather get them through the proper channels. And do it with a doctor who can actually identify if you're having an adverse effect from it. Absolutely. Because there have been people who have been taking these peptides and gotten allergic reactions, or they've fallen sick and they're unable to identify it. And a therapist or a masseuse who you're buying these peptides from is not going to be able to tell you if that headache is something you need to go to the hospital for, or something that a paracetamol will help you with. And so if you are interested in these peptides, you'd rather do it with a medical professional and have it done through regulated means. I think that's very important. And people, I think, because of pricing and because of trends, are trying to, find a way around it. But better safe than sorry always.
Always. Better safe than sorry. Take your precautions. And because it's something you actually putting into your body, I think you definitely need that medical guidance. It's so important. Doctor, share with us, why do you think some people are actually turning to these kind of products instead of seeking, proper medical guidance as to their weight gain or obesity?
So like I said, I think it has to do with, trends in social media as well, and also with a lot of stigma around weight. So many people have struggled with their weight for such a long period of time, and when these drugs first came out, especially the original drugs themselves, like Ozempic and stuff, they're quite expensive. And so they're only accessible by a certain, like you said, the celebrities in Hollywood and stuff like that, they're only accessible by a certain market. But people who have struggled with their weight and stuff like that for a very long time, and the stigma and the self-esteem and lack of confidence, when they see these things trending on social media, that's why they tend to go through these routes. And which is why we try to make, like as healthcare professionals, we're trying to be as accessible as possible for all of these patients to be able to get these products if they need it. So it's just, even sometimes people who don't need it tend to want to buy into the trend.
So tempting.
It's very tempting. You tend to want to buy into the trend because you see people on social media who speak about it like it's such a miracle. And you see how great they look and how phenomenal they feel, and then you want to sort of follow the trend. But it's never a one size fits all.
That's true. As I mentioned earlier, like we sing this, if you go and see Hollywood, I mean, most of them are looking the same, and it's called the Ozempic face. It's like that sunken and hollow, the eyes and the cheekbones, and to me personally, it doesn't look so
attractive
appealing
anymore.
And attractive as they used to.
Yes.
So is that like one of the downsides? Because I did hear one of the actresses actually saying that even though she's trying to gain weight now, she can't. Could that be one of the side effects? So when you stop losing weight, what happens?
So one of the long-term things with this is that some people who do leave, they do tend to gain the weight back, because obviously your appetite is going to return back to normal. But there's a catch with either way. Even people who are on the drug, some of them respond very well and very quickly.
Right.
If you do it with a medical doctor, we usually like to monitor your muscle mass, and we want to make sure it's very slow. So people who lose weight too quickly, that's when we lose the collagen and the muscle definition and stuff like that. So, but if we do it nice and slowly, you can actually get benefits from it, especially if you're extremely overweight. We doing this more to be healthy. At the same time, we're not just trying to get full aesthetic benefits from this. It's not simply about that.
I think that's important to remember.
That's important. There's a lot of stigma behind it. People are doing this to look a certain way. And you know, as a doctor, obviously I have to stand very much against that, because we're not giving this to, I'm not trying to make anyone skinny here. We're trying to make sure you're healthy, and we're trying to fight against obesity. That's the point. If you're clinically obese and you warrant this medication, you should have access to it. But you need to realize that the response to these treatments, some people respond very slowly, but you have to be very patient with it, because a lot of these trials that we get, where, for example, Ozempic has 15% weight loss from the baseline, Mounjaro has 20% of weight loss from the baseline. That came from clinical research. But all of this was done on research that was between 52 to 76 weeks. So it was done over a year, and that was the average result. So you have to be very patient with it. And once you come off it, you can also, like when everything returns to normal, the food noise comes back, you can gain that weight back as a rebound weight gain. But that's why you need to taper off, be on a proper regimen, make sure your biology and biochemistry is actually quite like normal. If you have insulin resistance, do you warrant to stay on it for a long period of time? Is there something else you can take to supplement that? And that is where your medical practitioner comes in.
So
that sort of guidance comes in. But also, this is done as a team. We don't work simply as doctors. We work with dietitians. We work with our personal trainers and biokinetists. It's so important that they are looped in. You know, they're part of the fitness industry, and that also plays a role, because like I said, this isn't a miracle drug. It's a supplementary drug. So if your lifestyle changes while you're on it, your appetite may return, but that weight may never return. So it's up to you.
I love that. You know, as you're speaking, definitely knowledge is power and ignorance isn't bliss. So if you're going to be doing this, then definitely have the right team to help you with this. What would you say, Doc, is actually the biggest mistake people make when trying to lose weight?
There's a lot of mistakes that people make when trying to lose weight, and I think as women we all would know them because we've made all of those mistakes previously. But for me, it's the one size fits all trend at the moment. Is thinking that what worked for the other person, when you see someone has lost weight, be like, what are you taking? Is assuming that will work for you. And that, I think, is a big mistake. And because like I said, it's not just about your body and diet and lifestyle. Sometimes it's also biology. So if you're someone who has PCOS and is chronically obese, the same thing that's working for someone who just lost a couple of kilos and her life has changed is not going to work for you. You know, that military diet is not going to work for you. There's a lot of biology behind it. And at the same time, as a normal person who's just gained a couple of kilos, you can't go and look at someone who has insulin resistance and ask them what medication they're taking and try and take the same thing for you to lose weight. You have to look and individualize it to your lifestyle and your body, and also not buy into this whole trend that you need to look a certain way to be okay. Because your body will never look the same. And that is very important to understand. To wake up every single day and be upset that you don't look a certain way is being too hard on yourself, because it's not the lack of discipline and willpower that's the problem here. It's the fact that at different stages in your life, you're going through a stressful period in your life, you got a lot of stress or whatever it is, you're going to look different. And you got to just give your body time and trust yourself that at different phases in life you will look a certain way. And then make sustainable lifestyle changes and be more easy on yourself. And it's about just having a good lifestyle, making sure you're happy, healthy and well, and you'll eventually get there.
You said you summed it up so nicely, because you know what, at the end of the day, the way we perceive our external always comes from the internal. And as you said, we're going to wake up every day and look at ourselves and just think, I'm not good enough. Can you imagine what you're doing to your subconscious? And then you're going to always feel not good enough. So it does begin internally. What do I really want? And if it's happiness, then it does begin with you being happy with yourself. And then understanding your why. Why do I want to lose weight? Is it just because I want to fit in, buy into the trends? Because I think you can never keep up with that trend, you know. So the self-esteem, the self-confidence, knowing yourself, knowing what's important to you, the inner work is so important.
It's so important. And I also feel like, you know, we can't change what the world thinks. And unfortunately, we know what the world thinks when it comes to weight loss and looking a certain way and aesthetics. But you can change how you perceive yourself and how you think. And that's the first step forward. If you understand that your body is never going to look the same and that you're currently healthy, or you understand what you're going through, you can be a lot more merciful on yourself. And when you make that change in yourself, you see that you're also a lot more kinder to people around you. And as someone who's in the field, I can very much tell you that when we see patients every single day and we're holding their hands through this journey, and some of them have struggled with weight loss for years, and it's affected their self-esteem, it's affected their life, it's affected their relationships. You realize that it's a lot more complex than diet and exercise. I have had people, work themselves to the bone and not lose a single kg, and it's all because of their biology. So it's quite ignorant now to think that it's simply just movement and exercise. There's a lot more happening in today's time. Genetics, all of these things, stress, lack of sleep, all of these contribute to body composition.
A saying is coming to me. Once I did a flyer, and I don't know whose quote it is, but it's your personal biography that creates your biology.
Yes.
So whatever you believe and you hardwire, neuroplasticity, you hardwire your brain into thinking, is going to be your truth. So you see people then that just accept who they are and they embrace who they are and they love it, even though they may not be that skinny and bones. And so ultimately, you get to dictate how you want to show up and what's good in your eyes, because the way you feel about you obviously is the way the world is going to then see you. But it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm so glad that as a doctor you came from such a holistic approach, so realistic, taking in all the elements, the positives, being realistic as well, and also realizing that we do also need that inner work, which is so important. We thank you for your time this morning, Dr.
Thank you
Fatima.
so much.
And we hope to have you back on Urban Woman very soon until we connect again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And that was Dr. Fatima Zahra Mohammed, who is a medical doctor from Pietermaritzburg, currently working in medical weight loss, hormonal health, peptide therapy for Dr. Mathan Associates. And we were chatting about weight gain, insulin resistance, and peptides, and everything that you actually needed to know before starting a weight loss journey.